Anyway, we did a class yesterday in person, and some of it was dealing with the results of the presidential election. Anything you remember or want to add to that?
Processing is ongoing.
Yes, yes.
But I mean, I want there to be a bright, like all parents, I want there to be a bright and peaceful future for my children. I know you want that for your grandkid. So, you know, just work to that, right? You know, I posted today a laundry list of all the things that Trump and Speaker Johnson and Project 2025 want to do. And in many ways, it's a worst case scenario that relies on them being competent at actually executing on their own agenda, which I don't have any faith in. So, I mean, is the world going to be an objectively harsher place than it would be under a Harris administration? Of course. Will people literally die as a result? Yes, unfortunately, they will. But what we can do is, work to minimize the damage. I'm very heartened that Gavin Newsom called the California legislature into an emergency session to, harden defenses, as it were. I have full confidence in Joe Biden and his administration to harden defenses over the next 3 months, and put as many guardrails in place as is possible for a lame duck president to do. We're already, sending advisors and more equipment to Ukraine, for example. So, there are powerful forces and powerful anti-democratic forces trying to reshape the earth for the ultra rich, but there are also positive, powerful forces trying to make it more democratic and fair for everyone. So, yeah, it's human condition, right? I write science fiction. I think about the long game. I think about the long past and the long future. And I maintain hope for our species. I think going out to the provinces and farming rather than trying actively to stop World War II is probably a good move for O Sensei. He survived and he created something lasting. Who knows? Someday it might prevent a war in the future, right? My first Aikido sensei Don Levine, who was also a professor of sociology, organized many years ago through Aiki Extensions an Aikido conference on the island of Cyprus, to which he invited and got Palestinian and Israeli Aikidokas to come and train. And they did, and they trained together, and they had a positive experience. So, these things can happen, right? Aiki Extensions is still, Don has passed on, but Aiki Extensions is still an ongoing thing, and it's trying to put, Aikido principles at work into the world. So, go them, right?
Okay.
So, that's just one example, right? And there you go. That's what I got today. I got that, it's not the end of the world. It's bad, but it's not the end of the world. And we can try and inject as much positivity, and that requires being grounded and well slept and getting exercise, and the training is really good for all of that. So
there's a great thing in the movie South Pacific. And, there's this Frenchman, Emile, who seems to have left France under certain unknown circumstances, and he has a plantation in the South Sea. And across a crowded room at a party, which included military, he sees this nurse that's there. And across the crowded room, they both fall in love. So he invites her to his plantation. And it's a musical, so, she's very optimistic. So that's just Nellie Forbush, played by, oh gosh, what's her name? But anyway, so she sings a song called Cockeyed Optimist. He's kind of there with her, and they're kind of within the actual magic of what it's like to be in love with somebody. And there's this war in the background. People are dying. People are predicting the end of the world and everything. And then she kind of says, but I can't get into that right now. So she sings this song. And, one of the things she says is, can't believe it's the end of the world. And then Rossano Barazzi, who plays the Frenchman, looks at her, and they're both in love. And he says, perhaps the end of some worlds. Not the end of the world, but the end of some world. And so let's just say that one of the worlds that may, as a result of this end, is a world where the masculine sense of authority is questioned, where because of gender, one person doesn't lose the election, and and also because of race, and that the world looks at the fact that they basically are looking for change, and they choose somebody to re-elect who's not likely to give it to them. And so certain worlds have ended. For some of us, I tend to be more of a progressive, liberal, humanistic type. That was a real slap in the face. And so, there's a world where we look at, oh, this has got to win because it's beautiful and, and no. The country chose to go for a proven, convicted felon, basically a rapist, and make him the most powerful person in the world, seeking change when he's had 4 years on record, and a lot of the issues of current administration, such as the economy, came because of his former president's economic policies of lowering taxes for the rich, empowering their corporations to price gouge, and that so much of the country basically re-empowered that person. And so that world that supported that must end. The end of some worlds. And maybe for the present of 4 years or whatever, the world of progressive, liberal, humanistic, that world has ended. But the people, out of ignorance, resistance to cultural trends, gender, and race will be facing a world of their creation. And unfortunately, the rest of us have to live in that world. And we need to live in that world as warriors, not basketball player warriors or warriors that wield weapons to kill other people, but warriors of the spirit. And that's going to be a challenge. So that's my add-on to what you said. We still have to wake up. And in 4 months or so, we have to wake up in Donald Trump's America.
That we do.
Yes. And there's no sugarcoating it. So what would be, in terms of the philosophy of Aikido, basically is one of the things that went down in flames. Weshibo Sensei said Aikido is true democracy. Good. But democracy only works when the people respond, develop intelligence, compassion, and through their intelligence, discernment. Discerning the path of the future, learning from the past, providing hope for people as opposed to old solutions. We're confused. So let's re-elect somebody we say is a strong leader. Bully is never strong.
Yeah, the irony of like taking the literal strong leader woman prosecutor who worked her way up to the Senate despite being a Black and South Asian woman, and prosecuted drug gangs and this and that, not seeing her strength, right? And then seeing the paper tiger that is Donald Trump and saying, oh, he's a tiger, he's strong. It's a lack of discernment.
The end of some world means the birth of new. And so we're at a point, waking up in Donald Trump's America daily, confronted with whatever it is we're confronted with, functioning, a lot of energy, tapping it. Again, spirit sharpens spirit. One of the things that I remember from studying, Carlos Castaneda's books, the Don Juan books, and whether Don Juan was a real person or a conglomerate of different people that Castaneda studied with, and whether he somehow channeled the whole thing. I'm not quite sure. But one thing that Don Juan said, Don Juan being a Native American, said his whole culture was decimated by the Spaniards, destroyed. And he said there was only one group within that culture that thrived. And the word thrive has many meanings. It wasn't that our definition of thriving would meet that. And he said that section were the brutal, the shamans, the sorcerers that had to deal with the fantastic oppression of what the Spaniards did to the Native American culture. And he said they reached heights of consciousness, creativity, and power. He said that hadn't been equal. And so a lot of that is, a lot of energy is going to come up during the coming 4-year cycle of Donald Trump. We have to wake up every day. And a lot of our more humanitarian, liberal beliefs will be trampled. Just like the Spaniards trampled the Native American culture that Don Juan was referencing. Very destructive. And we're going to have to deal with it. We're going to have to deal with that anger, even that hatred, even that sense of unfair oppression. And like the ancient brujo, sorcerers, shamans that Don Juan referenced, we transform. That's what Osensei did during World War II. He upped his game. The Aikido that we know today was somewhat radically different than the pre-war. But he farmed, he prayed, he trained, he functioned. He grew food, not just for himself, but he needed it for himself. But he sent that food to Tokyo for people who were starving. And, being in touch with the finer forces of the universe, they told him, stop the war, stop the war. And what did he do? Well, he built a shrine to his vision of Aikido, enshrining the kami of peace, beauty, creation, and following the end of the war and the occupation of Japan by the United States. There was a charter in 1948, which is my birth year. I don't know if there's any significance to that, but Aikido was the very first martial art given permission by the occupation to open because it espoused peace. And a lot of the spirit of the country during World War II was tied to the more militaristic, martial sense and entitlement of the Japanese people. And therefore, Aikido, and for that, Shiboto Sensei needed people who were able to do that. I don't think he himself would have written the charter, gotten the charter, but he was the motive force behind that. He inspired enough people to stand up for Aikido, realize what Aikido was and how Aikido was different than the other martial arts and the martial spirit of Japan in general. That Aikido was for the world, not just the tiny country there. But that was a big step that it was able to open before any other martial art was given permission. And so what we need to do is, are things going to get that bad? Potentially. Because we're used to freedom here. Our freedom will be curtailed, most likely. How we deal with it? Or will we deal with it like the brujos, the ancient sorcerer shamans of Don Juan's culture when the Spaniards took away their whole world? Or Will we be consumed by the hatred, the judgment, the discrimination that the future administration is almost certainly going to bring? And so we take it as a challenge. We up, in sports terms, we up our game. Okay? Day after the election, which was a real down day, I watched the basketball game, the Warriors, who are not terribly highly regarded this year, even though they still have their North Star, not Kevin Durant, but obviously Stephen Curry, going into Boston, facing the NBA world champions. And they won. They won a game they were supposed to win. And they had teamwork. They were creative. Just when it looked like Boston was going to win, they upped their game. And so, even though, it's a basketball game, and the title, Warriors, Golden State Warriors. Not that we're basketball players, but we need to find our warrior spirit to not just survive, but to prosper. And that's one of the things that we're going to really make one of our themes in the opening, or the reopening of Aikido of San Jose in a local San Jose location, which I do believe is going to come very quickly. I had a conversation yesterday with David Eves, who's really in charge of that whole thing, and we started discussing economics. And so there's some legal things that we're going to have to do. So that lets me know that I have no idea about the actual thing. We still need PG&E, as far as I know, to okay the electrical. And we need the city of San Jose to give us a user's permit. And that can take a lot of time, or maybe it'll come a lot faster than we can imagine. But we will be open. And when we are open, we will offer a place where people can come discover, tap, develop their warrior spirit. But we're warriors for peace. We're warriors for a just world. And a lot of that is going to be the exact opposite of that. It's likely to be flaunted right in our face. And the Stanton spirit. And we get that juice to deal with the injustice of it all. We tap it. We even become creative with it. And so that's really what we do when we reopen. Anyway, we are okay. And we have a practice. Okay, martial art of Aikido. Two movements. And flip. That last, call it that up and down movement, whatever you want to call it. What do you see?
Well, I was doing it along with you. So
Yeah.
what I feel was what I see as well is where the body, like the hips and the body and the alignment of the body move to generate the movement of the staff and
Okay.
thus the flow. Like you're not just standing there, arms up, arms down. You're doing a whole body movement, which is integrated and singular in purpose and execution, which is another way of saying flow state.
Okay.
So I was doing my best at that, right?
Okay.
As always, to try and focus on like where my hips and my feet were while I was doing the motion and not so much focus on where my arms were. They just sort of take, if I get the hips right, the arms take care of themselves. So
Okay.
that's
Good.
like the biomechanical focus, right? The
Yeah,
other
yeah.
thing I was noticing was that while I was doing it, I wasn't worried about the election or anything else. I was just focused on what I was doing.
Okay. Now, one of the things that you said is when you were in that focus moment, you weren't worrying about the election. So where were you, other than the fact you were detailing, the hips and everything? Where were you?
I'm not sure that I was really anywhere. I wasn't like my mind was not separate from what I was doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So I was in the body, I was in the moment, I was doing the thing. And that's basically where I was the whole time. Right? It's just there, it's just present.
Well, yes, this motion. Let's just say there's something called the warrior spirit. Now, am I training to kill or get anybody? No. What's my goal there? Well, maybe what we're trying to do. Studying the movement very deeply. Up and it down. Researching them. Seems like it's primarily a defensive block, parry, block, parry. Okay? But then there's what you might call the, make up a term here, the alchemical crucible. Well, you can't study forever, and you can research forever. But that area, and let's just say that alchemical crucible, a warrior spirit. And then let's make a jump right there and remove the word warrior. Spirit. Spirit. Spirit.
We have Yarrow.
Hello? Do we pick up somebody?
Yep, this is Yarrow. Sorry, couldn't make it
Oh, hi,
tonight.
Yarrow. Yeah,
Hi.
nice to meet you.
You
Yeah,
too.
okay, glad you joined us. It's a continuation of yesterday's class, so we're taking this motion. I'm researching it. Okay, now library, I'm studying is the movement. Defensive movement research carried for cover, parry, boom, booms. I'll be coming at you, you cover, boom, parry it, boom. Okay. But we're kind of saying that maybe there's something called the not, the term might be you're not studying a play and sports on the background. You're not walking through the play on the practice court or field. This is the playing field. Oh. And getting away from kind of more jock images. The alchemical crucible, polishing what we call the philosopher's stone. Transformation. See, if you just say library, even to some degree laboratory, you just kind of stay upper half. To actually stand in that is the transformation. And the point we're making is that there's going to be a lot of juice coming up dealing with the coming Trump return. Okay. Cap it. We're warriors of the spirit. Now, what is that? We say warrior spirit, spirit's in the moment. A certain amount of spirit in the library, a certain amount of that spirit in the laboratory. But then there's kind of the battlefield. Battlefield is maybe not a good term, but we're going to wake up having to deal with all this stuff. That'll bring up energies, emotional, mental. Easy there. Tap it. Baba. And where is spirit? It's right here, right now. Baba. Anything? Anything come up?
Nothing really new came up since my last comment. I invite Yarrow if he is able to unmute to offer some thoughts.
I'm just settling in, so I don't have anything yet.
Okay. It's an important move. For example, you can execute that motion that way. And lots of laboratory. just going to pure physical level. But the transformation, we got stuck in kind of a mind-body duality. I know what the country should be like, but I'm stuck in Donald Trump's America. Mind-body division. That division is going to bring up a lot of Jews, physical, emotional, even spiritual. Yeah. Don't hurt anybody. Boom, deal with that energy. So you are standing in spirit as a warrior of spirit. And you may need to give somebody good advice, help somebody cope, offer them compassion and understanding. And it's destructive to hate anybody. So we're going to have Donald J. Trump. We discern who he is. And he may bring up a lot of juice in us, but we don't go into hatred. That's the warrior of spirit, standing in spirit as a warrior of spirit. And the Aikido, there's just, I'm going to get exhausted doing that. Obviously, if I'm just in the laboratory, all that's bothered. It's like, boom, in that moment, yesterday's game, I was talking about the Warriors beating the Celtics, the world champion Celtics. Warriors who didn't even make the playoffs last year. And it seemed like every time the thing got a little juicy because, it wound up being a pretty close thing. Curry would hit a big shot, boom, over some giant falling back from 30 feet. He provided leadership. He showed the younger guys on his team how it was done. And so a warrior of spirit is a leader. And you're paying attention to things. You're reviewing your mechanics, proper grip from the top, proper position, hip, heart level, body, half turn, body, full turn. Wada. See, it's not that motion. This motion is infinite. You go through it. It's a figure eight. What's a figure eight when you go this way? It's infinity. But there's that motion and that motion. Now this motion one, two. But the first part tries to take the two over. And those two movements create who stands in spirit. It's a spirit. When it starts to move, there's a yin yang to it, fire, water, Izanagi, Izanagi. Now, Izanagi tries to take the whole thing over because he sort of understands Izanagi. But allowing Izanagi to come in. Izanagi, still Izanagi. Izanagi, Izanami. Izanagi, Izanami. Izanagi, Izanami. Izanagi, Izanami. Okay? Perceptive, positive. You can give yourself other labels for those forces. Anything? Anything you saw? Anything you might want to add?
I just think it's really cool. I hadn't seen a figure eight before in that move.
Yeah.
And when you mentioned Izanami, I remembered Setohara O and the Learn to Wait you talked about, because I recently read that book.
Okay. Well, Izanagi, Izanami, I mean, they're archetypes. He who invites, she who invites. They're not people. One time, Hikitsuchi Sensei took me apart and says, when we're talking about kami, we're not talking about people. He says, hito to chigau, ki nan desu. So again, that translates, they're not people. They're ki. You can call it spirit. You can call it ki. When it starts to move, it goes yin yang. Receptive, positive. Fire, water. Izanagi, Izanami. Now what happens is that the two forces create together. They can't create together when one is dominating the other, or one is being ignored. Okay? The number of people who wouldn't trust a candidate being a woman for president is shocking. The number of white women who wouldn't trust a woman of color. The number of Hispanic Americans who would give the advantage to somebody who hosted a campaign event where Puerto Rico was called a nation of garbage. What's lacking there? Intelligence. Discernment. And what's lacking? Creativity. We're looking for change and we elect somebody we had 4 years of. That's the lack of something. In an Aikido, this motion, that we're able to command a pivot to that pivot. Look at the other side. And the more humanistic, liberal approach has to be able to execute a pivot, not just react to. the evil. Understand that evil without becoming it. And see, ignorance is not stupidity. Ignorance comes out of resistance. I know that there's two. That there's a receptive, there's a positive. I know that. I go to the library. I read more about it. I even go into the laboratory and begin to research it a little bit. But the fact is, there's resistance to that second part. And the one that's on top, let's just say the masculine, won't really let the feminine, maybe for a while it moves back and learns to imitate it. But the masculine is still holding on to it. Why is it? One, fear. Two, resistance. Fear brings resistance. So at some point, boom, gotta let her in. Boom. No, I'm gonna get better at it. I'll speak more. But still I'm holding on to control. She's powerful. She's beautiful. Things like compassion. Joy. He can't be joyous. He's got to win all the time. She brings joy. Joy. Mindfulness, not full of mind, but wisdom. Compassion. He kind of knows the words, but he wants to win. And then, there's what you call in sports competition. We want to go from competition to winning, but we lose the joy or consciousness or mindfulness doesn't exist. We have no compassion, we just want to win. And we know the words, so we can high five who we beat or whatever it is. Transformation. Is victory. Transformation is allowing her in. Because she brings things like joy, mindfulness, and compassion. And he knows the words, get pretty eloquent at it. But the actual substance of that transformation is, and then once she's here, he kind of finds himself more fully because he doesn't have to kind of create his idea of her all. And I don't know, anything where we go?
Yeah, just that one way of looking at the election results,
Okay.
without, demonizing anyone on the other side, is a triumph of hate over joy. That and this is not surprising, right? This is human nature, and it's what social media companies have been taking advantage of all these years. Is the biggest way to get engagement is anger. It's easiest, right? What was the difference between the vote counts this time and 4 years ago? 4 years ago, after 4 years of Donald Trump, the centrists and people left of center were angry. They were
Yeah.
really angry. And they went to the polls in unprecedented numbers. This year, the Trump voters had the same turnout as 4 years ago. And, they were just as angry as they always were, and a lot more than Joe Biden, and they were motivated. They came out. But Kamala's campaign, which was so deeply refreshing to us,
Yes.
was based on joy, not anger, because, the Democrats had been running for the last 4 years, and joy doesn't engage. And like 10 million people stayed home that voted Democrat 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Donald Trump didn't get any more votes this time than last time. Not really, right?
Yeah, I didn't expect he would ever win the popular vote.
I mean, they haven't finished counting, but Kamala Harris got a lot fewer votes than Joe Biden against the same number of Donald Trump votes.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that, yeah, okay, so there's racism and sexism involved. Yeah, okay, there's anti-government kind of sentiment involved, but I think a large chunk of it is the human nature of being more engaged by anger than joy, which is something about our species that maybe it's malleable, right? Like Aikido teaches joy, right?
Yeah, I'd like to think so.
Yeah, right. But other things focus on anger, and they're much more, they have bigger bases, right? There are Aikidoka across the world, but we're not exactly the most popular martial art that there is. So not to say that the other martial arts are anger related, they are not, but the focus is on personal training in a slightly different focus.
Most of the martial arts are based on winning.
Yeah.
And, basically what it is it's the way Weshiba categorized it. It's masaka, it's true victory. Agatsu, victory over oneself. Victory over the hate. And where does a lot of this come from? Judgment. Carl Jung said it. He says most people don't want to think, they want to judge. Why are they judging? They're judging out of fear and ignorance. And once you judge, Donald's evil. I would say that's a discernment, not a judgment. And if you listen to if you watch behavior and you just sort of have any sense of things, you think, yeah, that's an evil and pretty harsh expression wants to come out, but this is being recorded, so I'm not going to say it. There's forbearance. He seems to be winning right now, but ultimately, it's called karma, and he's piling a lot up. And the expression would be leave him up to God, leave him to the universe. This isn't over. But for us, there's just dealing with the day by day. Again, I go back to the whole thing about, the Spaniards coming and decimated the Native American culture. And the only people that thrived under that severe oppression and destruction were the sorcerer magicians. You had to work a type of personal alchemy. You had to understand that how to sharpen spirit, sharpen spirit. You sharpen spirit, that sharpened spirit can sharpen more spirit. And that sharpened spirit can sharpen even more spirit. It's a process. And all of a sudden you're standing in those senseis golden bridge, which is an act moment by moment. And it can't be achieved in the library or the laboratory, both of which are essential, study, research. It's achieved in the alchemical cauldron of the universe shaping itself out of a primordial chaos. So there's an awakening of space. Creation happens, matter and energy, space and time are created. And we were right there, not in a present form, but as consciousness for that. And that process of creation can take a funny and even destructive turn. But it's the job of the shaman, brujo, the warrior, so to speak, not a fighter or a basketball player, okay, to shape what can be very chaotic or fall into very rigid, destructive judgment into creation. That's standing there on that floating bridge. Anyway, that's it for today. We will be at Mountain View on Sunday. I was even thinking about putting out if people kind of want to do a Aikido support group meeting. Maybe we can meet at the lake, which we do sometimes, and maybe just go around on some of this stuff and see what we can do. I remember in Avengers Endgame, you know, Steve Rogers, Captain America, he is conducting a support group. Everybody there has lost something. He lost the battle. Thanos won. Okay. And we appear to be on the losing side right now. But we only lose when we give up. And how to stand in spirit as a warrior of spirit is important. And I remember when the Martha Street location was open, there was a courtyard, and I was parked there, and you know, there'd be a lot of activity on the other side of the building because there were a couple of recording studios, and so there was a lot of musicians would go there to record, and there were a whole group of African American musicians, and I try to play music, you know. And so we were talking about a lot of this stuff, and you know, one thing I said, you know, I don't know if I believe in America anymore, but I still believe in Captain America. And that's the warrior spirit, the protective spirit. A warrior in spirit protects what's sacred. Our democracy, as it was conceived, is sacred. It's about to get defiled. No way. It's not going to be in some form. And we're going to be there for it. But I thought about what I said. I still believe in the spirit of America. I believe that the Captain America or Zorro or whatever it is will defeat Donald Trump. But it comes up from us, through us, representing the people. Anyway, that's got to be it for today. So I thank you for tuning in.
Thank you, Sensei.
Okay, you guys take care, and
Thank you.
maybe I'll
Hey, bye, Yarrow.
See you,
Okay,
Cliff.
okay, what are we doing? We're recording, so we're gonna stop the recording. Yes.